Welcome, City Council. We're excusing Chris Simonson tonight. He's not feeling very well, but we're glad that we're here. And as all City Council meetings are, they're recorded, and we'll say who's here. We'll start with you, Kate.
Kate Bradshaw.
Kendallin Harris.
Randy Lewis.
Millie Segura-Bar.
Richard Higginson.
Thank you. And we welcome staff as well. And for those who are here special for us today, we're really glad that you're here. And for those others that are observing our work session, this is the work session of the Bountiful City Council, Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. 2021. This is the 6 p.m. work session. And our very first our first agenda item, we're going to turn right over to Millie and the Youth Council.
Well, thank you, Mayor. And we are so happy to have some of our Youth Council here today. This is a dynamic group of youth, and you should have seen them on Saturday morning at our bunny hop.
I thought about you in the weather. I thought about you.
They were in the rain. They were flagging down cars. They were running from the pavilion to cars to deliver goodie bags. And they were a ray of sunshine to all of those cars who pulled into the parking lot. And that's just one of the great activities that they have done. But they have been so flexible this year in dealing with the forever changing logistics when it comes to our activities. And they've even taken the initiative to plan a local event. Normally we do we get to attend the leadership conference at Utah State University, but that's been canceled this year. And so these awesome youth have taken the initiative to plan our own local retreat for our city. And we're exploring the option of inviting a few other youth councils from our county. So we're really looking forward to that. So in talking to our youth council, we thought it would be fun for them to come and to have the members of the city council to yourselves, so to speak. You're welcome to ask us any questions, and if it's okay with the staff, if they have any questions for you, you're more than welcome to do that. This is Gary Hill. He is our city manager, and this is Tyson Beck. He is our finance director. Correct? Just want to make sure I say that correctly. And then I'll just let everyone, you may not know this, but we are all given different assignments from the mayor each year for the length of our term, or those assignments may change. And I'm assigned to streets and sanitation, and then the youth council. And then I'll let everyone else introduce themselves and say what they do. And then if you have questions, you're welcome to come to the podium. And even though this is kind of a formal room and a formal setting, we really want you to feel like there can be a lot of give and take. And so we really want this to be conversational, to answer any questions that you may have, or it can be as serious as you want, or maybe even just a little silly. But we want you to be comfortable. But when you come to the podium, if you could just introduce yourself, and if you have a role on the youth council, if you could share that as well. So, Councilman Higginson, would you mind just sharing what your role is on the city council and maybe how long you've been serving?
I am the resident old guy on the council. Chris Simonson may be older in age, but I get accused of being the oldest here regularly. I do know Kimball Mumford. He's a heck of a guy. So that's another role I have. I serve on the Power Commission. Bountiful City has its own power company, which is amazing because it contributes to our budget. And it also lets us control our own power costs, our own reliability, and hire our own people. So it's kind of a cool thing. I serve on some other budget committees, but that's the real important thing that I do, other than work with these fine folks in helping make decisions to run the city. And I've served for, 13 years now? At the end of this term, it'll be 16 years, and I will sail off into the sunset.
Not on the Great Salt Lake, I don't think.
No. Bountiful Pond.
The Bountiful Pond. Kate.
Kate Bradshaw. My committee assignments for the city include serving on the Legislative Policy Committee, with the League of Cities and Towns. That's the committee that's active working on bills during the legislative session that impact cities. I serve on that committee with our city manager, Gary Hill, with Clint Drake, our city attorney, and the mayor serves on that committee too. So we spend a concentrated amount of time together for 7 weeks working on those issues. I serve on the Davis County Mosquito Abatement District, where I have learned more than I ever thought I would need to know about mosquitoes. And for budget committee assignments, I serve on Parks and Rec. And let's see, I am almost 2.5 years, well, a little more than 2.5 years in. I filled 1 year of a council member's term who resigned to become a UTA commissioner, and then was elected in the same cycle that Councilwoman Barr was elected in.
Kendallin?
Hey, so I'm Kendallin Harris, and I was elected in I started my term in 2014, my first term, and I loved being an advisor in the youth council. It's really, I'm really so lucky. It's really the funnest job. I got to do that for a long time, and then recently I moved to the planning commission. So I won't say in front of Francisco that the youth council is more fun than the planning commission. Oh, shoot. But the planning commission is really fun, for sure. So the planning commission is really cool because people that want to have businesses here or build, like maybe do renovations to their homes or new buildings that are coming in, they go through the planning commission. So it really is interesting learning a lot about planning and zoning. And then also I get to work with the history commission, which I know some of you came to see the museum, the Bountiful Museum, and so that's been really cool to work with the people that are that do the history stuff for Bountiful. So that's really great. And I also get to chair the water committee. So water has a really unique role in Bountiful, how because of the elevation, the mountainside, we have to pump water up the hill to get to all the homes. And so it's really different challenge than a lot of other cities for that reason. So yeah, but it's great to have you guys here.
Do you want to say anything, Mayor?
Sure. So I'm also one of the old guys, but I haven't been as long as Richard, and I'm not quite as old as Chris Simonson, who isn't here tonight. But being the mayor in Bountiful is really a special thing. Bountiful is, I think we used to be, when I got elected the first time, we were the 14th largest city in Utah. I mean, there's 248 cities and towns in Utah, and we were the 14th largest. I think we're about 16 now. But this is a very special place. Everybody knows there's people all over the earth because of several factors that know of Bountiful, and this is a great spot for all of us. I'm in my 8th year as mayor, and I've gotten to just see so many great things, like our new ice ribbon. Have any of you been down there to the ice ribbon? Did you skate? Did you think it was fun? I think you'll get even a bigger flavor for the ice ribbon and just the project there, the water features and everything else. Once it gets just a little warmer, I think it's going to be a magnet for a lot of the kids and the residents, for everyone really, to come down to the center really of Bountiful. So really appreciate it. I get to be assigned, because I'm a mayor here in Davis County, to several boards, and it really what is fun for me is I get to learn so many things. Learning is really what's what's attractive about being the mayor, and I like that a lot. Hey, we really appreciate you. You know, if I owned a small business for 25 years here in Bountiful, and if I saw an application and really now, I would appreciate it if somebody had on their application that they were with the City Youth Council. I'd know a couple of things that I would immediately be impressed with, and that is that you care about doing things for other people and you care about service. And that says, what you're doing says a lot about you.
Thank you so much. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Who drew the short straw? You can take off your mask so we can.
Yes, and is that green, is that light on there?
Just push the push button.
Push it.
Now it's on. Okay. Hi, I'm Hallie
A
Robinson.
little closer, just a little closer. You can pull it, there you go.
Okay. And I'm the city planner on the youth council. And my question is for Councilwoman Harris about the planning commission. I'm curious to know, like, what are some of the main projects that you've been working on this year?
That's a great question. Would you be willing, Francisco, to take that one? He's our planning director, and he would really have the best.
Yeah, absolutely. The one I'd like to share is the one that we're about to take care of, which is updating our general plan. So our general plan contains a consensus of how we want to evolve over time and what we want to be. So we're very excited about that work that's coming up.
And it's pretty cool. The general plan is something that we haven't done in a long time, but the city, to do a general plan, we look at like the city and we look at what areas do we want to have apartments? What areas do we want to have single family? What areas do we want to develop business? And what kind of businesses should be allowed in certain zones? And so, like, I never really understood until serving in this capacity, like, if you drive through the streets, you'll notice that there are not gas stations in certain neighborhoods, or there are not grocery stores in certain neighborhoods. Like, the whole city is zoned so that, there's just different zones in the city where things are allowed or not allowed. And so it's really fascinating. But our city, it's pretty built out. There's houses pretty much built everywhere. There's not a lot of just empty land in Bountiful, but there is redevelopment where maybe an old business gets torn down and a new one gets built in its place. And so we have an opportunity with the redevelopment where we can really think about, what do we want Fifth South to look like? What do we want Main Street to look like? And over time, as new things come in, then we can make sure that it's, with the general plan, we can make sure that we're actually doing things the way that are intentional, that we want, the kind of businesses we want, or the way we want things to look, things like that. So, and also you guys are probably familiar with 5 Points, the Renaissance area. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I work there.
Okay, yeah. So you're very familiar. Yeah. So in our last planning commission, we talked about the development of that space and what buildings are going to go in and how tall they should be, things like that. What's the maximum height they're allowed, and so it's really fascinating stuff to get to make those kinds of decisions.
So we are planning on putting something in the Renaissance area soon? Is that?
Yeah, I don't know about soon, but I would say there are definite plans of what will be built there, and most of it will be housing, like apartments, but some of it will be like a few restaurants are planned, and it will take time for those things to happen. But it's cool. There's a plan. That's definitely good.
Some of it depends on the property owner. They have to come up with that capital to build the things that we've approved in the plans and when they come for permits. And so it's always kind of a chicken and an egg thing, where sometimes they're waiting on our side, but sometimes we're waiting for them to finish their financing or to make sure they have the resources to build what they envision that fits on that property.
That's a good point, because Bountiful doesn't own that land, so it's really up to the property owner, to decide when they're going to do something there. But
Okay.
yeah, cool.
Great question.
Yeah. Thanks, Hallie.
My name is Kimball Mumford, and I'm the Bountiful City Youth Council Mayor. And I have a couple questions, but one of them actually kind of goes with what you guys were just talking about. And I was just curious as to the building process of like, when do you decide when we need to like build a bigger fire station or a hospital? Because things like schools, that's like handled by the school board, and businesses might approach you. But how do you decide things like a bigger hospital? Is that just like a certain percentage of the population, or?
Councilwoman Bradshaw, do you want to take that since you're on the
Yeah,
hospital board?
one of my assignments is also to serve on Lakeview Hospital's board. The hospital is privately owned, so it's not a city facility. And so therefore, it would be up to, Lakeview Hospital, for instance, is owned by the Mountain Star Hospital chain of hospitals. And so it would be up to their kind of corporate plans when they feel like they've reached a certain bed capacity that would say, look, we should add on a wing to the hospital, or if it was in their capital plan to say, let's get, let's create a new specialty that we're going to do here and invest in that equipment and bring in the doctors that would do that specialty. So when a business decides they're ready to do those types of things and change or expand the use of their property, that's when we would come into that picture and say, okay, what percentage of this lot are you allowed to build on? Do we need to make modifications there? Do we need to look at how the traffic in that area works if you're going to increase the number of people coming? So those are those things. So it's not like totally within our control, but there are ways that we can help shape. We have a special zoning designation around Lakeview Hospital, the hospital zone, which we've been working on as one of the projects to make sure that area stays vibrant.
Thank you. And then another question I have, I'm not sure about other people on the youth council, but I've kind of been considering like a future career in maybe politics. How does someone even get into politics? Like, do you just one day, oh, I want to run for city council? Or is there, like, what's the process that you guys went through? I'm sure it looks different for each of you, so maybe just a few of you can share.
I'll take it then first. Oftentimes, it's driven by a concern or a problem that you have with the way things are being done. So unless you're very passionate about a specific issue, maybe it's not the right time for you to run. If you, not necessarily always the case, but oftentimes people have run for council in the past because of the fact that they had issue with what decisions were being made, what direction the city was going in a specific area. So that drives people into local politics.
I think that's a good point. A lot of times there's somebody who's like really mad or upset about something. And so I would say that anger is not the right reason to run for office. Like for somebody who is really upset about the way something's done, and then they get in and then they maybe have some influence over that one thing, but then there's so many other issues, right? And so I do think that that's true, that sometimes people get like they're interested in maybe a certain thing, but for me, it was more like I just wanted to get involved, and I loved the idea of representing my neighbors, and it's just a good way to get involved. So yeah, like I definitely think that, in fact, one thing that I would kind of watch out for is if you ever see people running for office and you're trying to decide who to vote for, if somebody is kind of like a one-issue person, in my mind, that's a red flag because there's so many other things that they're going to be voting on, right? So it's a responsibility to represent your neighbors, not just in that one area. So
My recommendation would be to first start on maybe working on some local campaigns to see if it's something that you are interested in, to do the behind-the-scenes work and see, first of all, what it takes to get elected. I think all of us have our own stories. We could all tell you stories of times when we've been personally berated by well-meaning people. And so it can take a toll on you, but I think the end result of being able to be a public servant is worth it for me personally. But I think if it's something that you're interested in, there are so many local campaigns that would love the help of anybody. So I think my recommendation and my suggestion would be just to start and to see if it's something that you really like once you're actually doing it. Because it's going to be, I think we all have a different story as to why we threw our hat in the ring. So that would be my one recommendation.
So it's Kendall?
Kimball.
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 Yeah.
So Kimball, I'm one of these other kind, in that I didn't really have any background of any kind. I just found it was a time of my life when I thought this would be a good time, and somebody, 3 or 4 people made suggestions to me that because the former mayor was not going to run again, and it started playing in my mind, but it was really a matter of about a 2-week stretch. But I had somebody that sent me a letter once I decided to run, which was done pretty quickly, and had to be done quickly. They sent me a note and said, you know, what qualifies you to be a mayor? What have you done in the city? What committees have you been on? What have you done? And I'm not saying that these things aren't important. I think they help. That said, what qualifies you to be the mayor? And I sent back this little note. I live in Bountiful, and I'm an American. And if you are, then you can run.
Yeah,
That's all you need.
that's true.
You have to
Thank
be,
so much.
you have to be an American, and you have to live in Bountiful. And really, when it comes to politics in the United States, that's what it takes.
Yeah.
You don't have to be special to run.
Okay.
But you are.
But you are special.
I just have to say too, like, Kimball's mom is on the school board, so he knows.
Liz?
Right,
Oh,
yeah.
I love Liz.
So he knows, he has worked on campaigns, and I just think that, I just want to say right now that any of you guys, if you ever want to run for anything, you'd be excellent. So you should consider it.
The other thing to keep in mind if you're interested in politics and think it's something you want to do someday is, my path has been through working on campaigns, working for a political party, working for the state legislature, and then moving into the government affairs and lobbying side. And through those different positions, I got to watch a lot of other people do jobs like this or other jobs. And it provided an interesting reflection point on how people tackled problems, how they engaged with constituents, how they chose to communicate, and lots of examples of people where I thought, gee, I want to be like that person, or I hope I never conduct myself like this person. Lots of those, examples back and forth in the different jobs I held. And so think about, opportunities to work on campaigns. You can put a lot on a resume after you've been on a campaign. They usually run on a shoestring. So if you step forward and say, I'm willing to handle your social media, or I'm willing to do your walking plan,
Conflict resolution.
you can put a lot of these things on a resume like you were actually paid for. But serving on a staff role actually is another great insight into whether this is something you really want to do.
Yeah.
You're going to knock it out of the park, all of you.
Can I make one other comment, Kimball, in regards to that question? There's training that the Utah League of Cities and Towns provides through their attorney,
Really?
Dave Church.
It's a good point.
That one of his favorite quotes is, "If you're not prepared to have angry neighbors stand in front of you and tell them no to their face, then you're probably not cut out to be on a city council." If you run for the legislature, if you run for governor, you don't have to deal necessarily with your neighbors in the grocery store day to day. So,
Knocking on your door.
a consideration, exactly.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, thank you. Do any of you guys have more questions? Or you want to ask first? I have one more question.
Just something quick, and hopefully it's not too complicated. I know-
Brooke, would you mind introducing
Oh,
yourself?
sorry. My name's Brooke Blazard. I'm not on the leadership board of it, but I know we have like droughts every year in Bountiful, and everyone keeps saying like, we have not enough water. I was just wondering what kind of is the plan if we do run out of water?
Can I answer this one? So Utah has a historic plan of assigning water called prior appropriation. Whoever files on the water first in Utah owns the water rights. Bountiful had a lot of really smart people leading it through the years, and Bountiful has more than enough water. We also have an aquifer that we draw from that recharges very quickly. Our geography is a bowl here, funnels storms off the Great Salt Lake, and we get more precipitation than most of our neighbors do. Bountiful is set on water.
Excellent.
So don't worry about Bountiful's water. We need to worry about our fellow state residents. But
Okay.
Bountiful is as comfortable as a drought city can be, or a desert city can be, water-wise.
Okay.
Did I overstate that, Gary?
No, I think you didn't. I would just add a caveat to that, which is we still have to move the water from location to location in town. And so, sometimes we'll have a well pump that will go down, or our treatment plant will go down. And that's the bigger risk to us, is if we can't move water around town where it needs to be up to the reservoirs and then let it gravity feed down. And so a big piece of what the council has done over the last several years is making sure that we can maintain that infrastructure and replace things. And so as important as it is to have the water, and Richard's absolutely right, we had leaders in the past that made some great decisions. Our job really now is to make sure that we're paying attention to that infrastructure so we can get it around town.
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Brooke?
I'm not sure how much time you guys set aside for us, so you can just cut me off if I'm.
Hours.
Probably about five more minutes. How much time do you need? About 15 minutes, 20 minutes?
So you're talking about like the angry neighbors. One question I had is, how do you, when you receive like a new piece of legislation, how do you take into account like the people's opinions? I know like one really polarized topic was like the parks bill, or like the trails one. And I came to like a couple meetings, there were like some really angry people, but then it ended up passing. So how do you take that into account, and how much, yeah, just like how do you take that into account, really?
You guys all look down here. I guess I'll go.
Go ahead.
I'm happy to later.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, it's a good question. How do you factor the public input, which is never perfect, right?
Yes.
We have about 45,000 residents here in Bountiful. On any given issue, even the hottest of the issues that we've had since I've served on the council, we end up maybe hearing from a few hundred people, which is not the majority one way or the other.
Right.
So, I think part of what the people of Bountiful have elected us to do is to do that homework, to do the deep dive and the research. Every week we get a packet of material from the city with different things that we're expected to study and read up on and ask questions. There's lots of different seminars and trainings. We're expected to talk with our neighbors and be in touch with our neighborhoods about the issues that are important. And so it is somewhat weighing the direct feedback you get when an issue is coming up right before you. Some of it is applying what you've received in briefing materials that maybe tell an even deeper or longer story, so that you can factor that in. Some of it is knowing that people elected you, and that they elected you with a certain set of values and criteria that you said you believed in and would take to City Hall. And some of it is that people elected you knowing that you would go about solving problems using a certain method. And so it is that messy mix, all mixed in a bowl. That's how I decide.
Okay.
Yeah, another thing that I think is important is that the two sides of, let's take that issue that you brought up, had completely opposite positions staked out. And even though the bond issue passed, it's our responsibility, I think, to take into consideration the folks who didn't want this to happen and make sure that every penny of that money that is raised through property taxes that those folks will pay is spent carefully, and that will benefit the most residents of Bountiful. So that's another thing that Bountiful has been really good at for a long time, and that is taking care of our finances. We don't go into debt very often, and we don't do it lightly. And we try to be good stewards of the funds that the public is paying and make sure that its value is maximized in services to them. So,
Perfect.
And thank you for that. I think it's wise counsel, always. In my short year, or long year, depends on how you look at it, I'm the newest member of the council, so I don't have quite as many heated moments in my memory. But I think the important thing that I try to remember when talking to people, I have found that no one cares until they care. No one cares until there's something that's affecting them personally. And so when people come to me, it's 9 times out of 10, it's personal to them. And so I think being sensitive to that and acknowledging that, but then falling back on what Councilwoman Bradshaw reiterated was that when it does come down to it, we were elected for hopefully sound judgment and taking the time to really dive into the issues and acknowledging the reality that we can't please everyone, but that we just have to do our best to be gentle in our approach and making sure people feel heard and following up when we can. But for me, it's remembering that if someone's talking to me, it already feels personal to them. And so just being sensitive to that and acknowledging that. And then I find if we have a face-to-face conversation, people can we can come to an understanding. It doesn't mean we agree, but we can at least have clarity in whatever issue that we're talking about. So I think we just maybe have time for 1 or 2 more questions if,
I'd like to meet these other 2
yes.
people.
Come on up, Sarah.
Okay, so my name is Sarah Mcmurray. I'm not on the leadership, and this is my first year during BCYC, but I have loved every second of it. So my question is a pretty quick question, but a lot of times people will get turned down for buildings because it's too tall or it's the wrong color or things like that. And I was just wondering, how do you guys decide that? Is it based on the area or just how do you decide that?
Francisco.
I think
Yeah,
Francisco's the
thank you.
perfect one.
It's based on the area, understanding that zoning code, land use code is something that's designated for cities and municipalities to take care of, so we can determine our own future as far as what height is appropriate in whichever district that might be appropriate. And that also includes setbacks and to some extent building materials. So it's based on the legislative body, who is right here. This is your council representative, based on a set of rules that we adopt. And every year we fine tune them as we need to sometimes evolve with market trends.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks,
and to
Sarah.
you.
Hi, my name is Marshall Nelson, and I don't have a leadership position, sadly. So I have a question on what earthquake protocols do we have for Bountiful? Or like an emergency or something like that.
You should stick around for our full council agenda, because we're going to update that.
Gary.
Want me to take a shot at that one?
Please.
Marshall, is your question about how do we,
Yeah.
what do we do to mitigate the damage before they happen, or how do we respond once something like that does happen?
Yeah, the response.
Okay, that's a great question, and I'm happy to say that we have a wonderful organization in Bountiful. So the first thing that's in place is we do as staff, we do training on how to respond in an emergency, and we have a plan so that, for example, if with our windstorm is a great example, as soon as we started to see damage, we activated basically our emergency operations center, which means all the department heads get together and we start to assess through phone calls, through employees being out, through 911 calls, how much damage there is and where it's at. And then we also have a group of residents who have volunteered their time to help us communicate that information to each of 12 districts in the city. And so while the city's beginning to assess the damage that we need to take care of, we're also communicating out to these volunteer areas on what the damage is and how they can help. And that coordination worked just beautifully. for example, with the windstorm, we decided really early that we knew we were going to have a lot of trees and limbs, and several years ago, I think in 2012 when we had a windstorm, we tried to take it all down to the landfill. Well, this time we realized that didn't work as well, so instead we worked with these different districts and the churches, and we set up 12 different locations where people, so they didn't have to drive all the way down. And that was one of those decisions that was made quickly, but with input from a lot of people. And I mean, I can't say enough about the volunteer efforts in Bountiful and the ability that we've had and developed over the last, really probably 7 years to coordinate what the volunteers are doing with what the city's doing. And I could go on and on about it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just
It
pretty
does.
excited about
Hey,
it. It was
I may
awesome.
just add to that a little bit. The volunteer groups that he's talking about, a major one is the CERT training, it's called, which I had. I was called out by a CERT trainer in a meeting like this that said, "Mayor, will you come to our CERT training?" And I was like, yeah, I think I'll do that. Well, I'll tell you what, it was really intense, and there was a lot of hands-on things, and you had to go out to by the reservoir for Bountiful and do some hands-on training. Have you done this? Are you
Both
shaking your
my
head?
parents are CERT trained. They
And
want-
what's your last name?
Nelson.
Nelson? Well, I had that CERT training, and that community emergency response team, right by my garage door, I have my bag, and that has everything in it, that someone calls me and away I go. And there's a real structure to all of that. And it makes me feel good that I had the training, but it also just makes me feel good to see how the whole plan works. Yep.
Yeah.
Does that answer it?
Yes, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marshall. All right, Mayor, I think unless anyone has any pressing, should we ask everyone what kind of vegetable they would be? That's one of our interview questions.
Oh, it is?
Councilwoman Bradshaw, if you were a vegetable, what type of a vegetable would you be?
I would not be a vegetable because I don't enjoy eating vegetables, and I think it was George H.W. Bush that made a stand against broccoli. I would instead be a tree.
Awesome. Councilwoman Harris, if you were a vegetable?
I would probably be zucchini.
Zucchini? Okay.
Mushroom.
Is that a vegetable?
Isn't it fungus?
It's a fungi.
It's a fungi.
You're a fun guy.
That's what I did, Randy Fungi.
This is going downhill
Be
quickly.
the closest thing to a
I
vegetable
would
that I
be
could get.
spinach.
Spinach?
I love all vegetables, though.
Cute. I think I'd
I
be a
like
cucumber.
vegetables.
All right.
Hey, I just have one last question. When is the process for new members? When is that?
Do you want to take that, Kimball? Or Hallie? April 6th is when we'll start. Applications will be available for new members.
So we just had our new leadership apply, and we're doing interviews this Thursday. So in 2 days. And then that leadership, we'll take care of sending out the applications, but as far as reviewing applications, that'll be taken care of by next year's leadership.
Hey, by the way, one thing some of you said that I want to correct. You said, "I'm not in the leadership position." If you're on the youth council,
You're a leader.
you are a leader.
Amen.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
All right. And you're welcome to stay if you want, or you're welcome to leave. We're just going to move on to our
Yeah.
next agenda item.
With that, we'll turn some time over to Gary and Rebecca.
Thanks, Mayor and Council. We're gonna tag team this a little bit. I think, as you may all remember, public art has been kind of a priority, hopefully a priority for a while. It was something we identified a few years ago that we wanted to start adding to the public art, visual art in town, and began setting aside 1% of our general fund capital projects to create a fund. We've got a little bit less than $100,000 now in that fund. And, we had great intentions last year to get rolling, and then COVID happened and all the other craziness. And so we didn't get a great start, but I'm really excited now that we have hired Rebecca Hatch. She has taken the place of turns out her sister, Angela Pitt, but in a slightly different role as our community affairs specialist. And one of the major things that I wanted to have this position accomplish was overseeing and being the spearhead for the public art program. And I'm going to give Rebecca just a minute to talk about herself and her background, and then we're going to kind of just tag team what initiatives we have in place, things that we're contemplating under her direction, and then want to hear your thoughts on those and any other ideas that you have. So,
Thanks, Gary. Yeah, I'm excited to be here in person for my first time. It's great to meet you all.
Maybe this.
Oh,
Yes, we're going to hear you better. Thanks,
it's
Rebecca.
attached to some accessories, so it'll take a little bit of work. So a little bit of my background. I have a long life of passion for the arts, both in doing it myself and just the study of arts. And I studied it in college at Brigham Young University, studio art. And with that, I both have done my own art in those years, but also organized a lot of shows and curated shows of other artists, usually just in my own community wherever I was at, and have just had a passion for that for many years. But in the last few years, I've been working as a program manager, program director for an international humanitarian organization, planning programs for teenagers in a lot of other countries. And with that balance, I was excited for this position that kind of brought together those two passions for me of planning programs and putting together in place policies or guidelines as we go forward for Bountiful City, while also introducing some visual art in our city, which I'm really excited about. So we look forward to some of the projects we have coming up.
yeah, so let me tell you what we've already started working on. The first is we got to get our public art advisory board in place. And so we advertised to see who might be interested in that. We have 13 applications, and we're going to review the applications. Then Rebecca is going to work with staff to pick some folks that will basically be like the Trails Advisory Committee. It'll be a group that she and others that are involved can run ideas past, that will make recommendations to you on, let's say the council prioritizes, a statue or something like that downtown. The idea would be that the advisory board would take the applications, review things, and make some recommendations to you all. So we're pretty excited to get them in place. We hope to have them in place probably within a month. That's kind of the very first thing that we've got going on.
In that time, as we pull together, since I think once we have that board together, we'll have other projects that'll come forward. But in that time, we've first done a call for art entries for City Hall. We have a beautiful new building, so I'm excited to try and find artwork that we can fill in our hallways and in the offices with specifically 2D art. And that'll be a mix of some of the previous artwork that it was in City Hall beforehand, but as well as trying to invite some more of our local artists to have art inspired by Bountiful City to be in City Hall. And we've actually already had a handful, since we just put it out a few days ago. We've already had a few entries that have already come in, which are looking great so far. A part of that, of bringing art into the city, we'd like to have a rotating gallery. This will be in conjunction a little bit with the BDAC, as we're partnering. They already have a rotating show that they do both with students and other artists in the city. So we hope to have a rotating show here in City Hall at the lower level. What is that called? The alcove across from the meeting room. It's kind of a bump out part that would like to be a specific City Hall gallery, potentially to be rotating every 6 months or so. This could be both for local artists or maybe some of the high school or middle school students, which will be fun.
Yeah, so kind of excited about that. And at any point, please stop if you have questions, or if you really hate an idea, it would be good for us to know. Like that one, for
Definitely.
example.
I do have a question. I also want to say that I really liked everything I read in the write-up here. How can we promote that call for art?
Sure. If you have more ideas, so far what we've done is a combination of our own social media on the city and on our webpage, so Twitter, Instagram, and on our webpage. We're hoping that the Bountiful Davis Art Center, I've had communication with them that they'll put out that call with their own community. We're just waiting for them to be able to post that still.
It's
Perfect,
But if you have more ideas, we'd love some more.
perfect.
Get a following.
Thank you.
If you could send me that outreach.
Sure.
I happen to be a little bit connected to an art teacher at one of the high schools and can at least make sure that that high school has that information directly.
Excellent.
Might also help if we reach out to the other 2 high schools.
Absolutely.
That would be great. I'll set that up today, or tomorrow, actually.
And then as soon as we get the Public Art Advisory Board in place, our first project is going to be the downtown discovery art that we've talked about for about a year now. Whatever it happens to be, whether it's the bees or something akin to what we've talked about that happens in Greenville with the mice. We want to get their ideas, and then Rebecca and the Art Advisory Board will make some recommendations on what that might look like. But that's our first priority, is to get something working on that and installed downtown.
And so, as we keep going with that idea, we hope that once we have the Art Advisory Board and we have some momentum with the Discovery program, is to bring some art to the Bountiful Town Square, whether that's a piece of sculpture or a mural that's at one of those buildings there. I think that'll be our next step after Main Street, that we'd love to get going some art for the town square.
One caveat.
Yeah,
It cannot have the Bountiful logo on it, nor say Bountiful City on it.
deal.
We've got all of those corners covered.
Yeah, I will say, when we do that art, it'll probably be a commissioned piece, so I'm sure we'll do another set of bringing that to you guys to approve.
Super.
Yeah, and along with the mural, so Davis County Tourism has set aside funds. They want to start a mural program in Davis County on buildings, and they actually approached us, said, "Hey, we've got this money. Do you want to have a mural?" And so we'd like to get that going. BDAC has talked about possibly wanting to do one on the side of our building that they use. The downtown, square could be, almost said the P word. The town square could be a location. So that's some feedback we might like and then we could look at private buildings too. But I think one thing that we're looking for some feedback on is, are you comfortable with us doing the discovery art first and then shortly thereafter, or as that gets underway, working on some art for the town square? And do you have any feeling about what you'd rather see in the town square? Would you like to see a mural there? Would you like to see a mural elsewhere and statuary in the town square? Any feelings at this point, or do you want us to run that past the advisory board and come back?
I was just going to say, I think it's why you have an advisory board. I mean, if you're going to create one, let's use them.
I'm sure they wouldn't mind direction, though, too, if you have strong feelings about it, so.
Right.
Yes.
I think it's in a park, and it's in a park we expect kids to play and climb on things. The rocks we put in the water feature, the new letters that are already being climbed on, and it's a park, so something that maybe is meant to be interacted and climbed on and played with rather than admired at a distance, museum style.
I agree with that. And I should clarify, I don't have the authority to say you can't use the Bountiful logo. That was just a wisecrack. Murals are great sometimes for a couple of weeks, and I'd rather not have a mural in the town square if we can avoid it. I think that they age usually unwell and quickly. So an interactive art piece, I think it'd be awesome to start out with in this town square.
I wonder if we could have rotating murals, like a mural and then it's temporary and then we get a new one or something like that. So it kind of keeps it fresh. I don't know.
I know we did discuss that at one point, doing maybe every year or 2 years or something to change a mural. But that, I don't know, do we want to break all those artists' hearts and painting over their work? But I'm very excited about this project. I have every confidence in Becca. I have a few of her pieces hanging in my home, and she is just an incredible artist and an incredible community organizer, and Bountiful is very lucky to have her. I think this is going to really help our arts program take off. So
Awesome.
very happy that you're here.
Thanks, Millie.
Thank you.
Great.
Great.
We listed a few other things in the staff report that we might ask the Public Art Advisory Board to have an opinion on. I mentioned in one of my weeklies that Rebecca's also working with Francisco and Brock for the farmer's market, and so she'll be pretty familiar with the downtown plaza, downtown square. We don't have a swear jar yet, but I would have just had to put something in it. It's really hard to change after that many years. But one idea could be to have sort of a Scarecrow Festival, right? A seasonal thing where we invite people to come down and decorate a scarecrow, and they go in the different planter boxes. We've talked about, I think we have a great opportunity in the bulb outs to begin putting permanent art in the bulb outs, statues and things like that. But those are just some of the things that I think we want to start considering. Anything to add to that?
I think that's great. I think what we've also talked about is with the Art Advisory Board, I think we're going to have a few more ideas that'll come in that we'll be excited to hear of things that we haven't thought of yet, of what other people's ideas might be.
May I ask one question, just for curiosity, for the Main Street mural, the funds that the Davis County's Tourism and Development Department has contributed, that's different, or do we know what that amount is? And that, I'm assuming, is different than the 90,000 total, or is that included in the 90,000?
Yeah, that's separate, and they haven't set an amount.
Oh, okay.
They just said they have funds available. I'm guessing that we would have to match a portion of that. I don't know how much. And the policy of murals is another good question, right? I mean, they can turn out looking bad after not very long. One thing we do have at the town square that we could put elsewhere is, we have those panels that are removable that are basically a canvas. And it doesn't have to be down there, but say on the side of the BDAC, you could install basically a canvas that when it gets tired, you retire it and you put a different kind of mural on or something. But those two funds are separate.
Okay.
Do they do something other than humpback whales?
Hey, Kurt Weiland's a great place to
Isn't
start.
that- isn't that right?
You can have a good
That's what I use. Hey, listen, thank you. I think we're heading in a direction I really, really am passionate about, and I really love it. So, yeah, I'm going to be opinionated on it in a very positive way.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll take a couple of minutes, council, to stretch for a moment, and then we'll start.